Oh, you gotta stop me.
Like,
Wow. Everybody was so excited they've frozen on my end. So it's
Oh, no.
There was too much energy there.
There was a
Yeah,
lot of energy.
there.
Energy
That's
spike.
right.
yeah, sure.
Well, hey, welcome back. Episode number 138, Mastering Modern Selling. Tom Burton here with Brandon Lee this week. Carson is in Seattle, I think. We are going to be talking about, and we have another great guest, Alice Heiman. Alice, welcome. But we are going to talk about something that, Brandon, we talk a lot about, I think, maybe indirectly on these shows, but I don't think we've really hit it head on like we are going to do today, which is what is the important in the role of the CEO and the executive team in driving sales, not just sales targets, but sales best practices and even sales results.
Mm-hmm.
And Alice is an expert in this area and is going to kind of take us through maybe the playbook, if you will, Alice, a bit on how to do this and what are some of the things that our CEOs are doing wrong and right and so forth to really impact their organization.
Well, remember, Tom, the last time Alice was on our show, she said something that I picked up and I've been saying over and over again. I think you get like a nickel every time I say it somewhere, Alice.
Oh, good.
You said any CEO who is not using social is a sales preventer.
Yeah. Well, they do a lot of other things to prevent sales too, but certainly by not being out there and being accessible and available and sharing thoughts and connecting, and if you're not doing that, you are preventing sales. Sorry.
In 2025, I think it should be part of the job description. And I'm sure that's controversial and there's a lot of CEOs that won't want to do it. But for the exact reason that you said, in this world, every company needs a face and a voice to represent the company. It should be the CEO. And if you're not doing it, you're not recruiting the best people. You're not retaining the best customers. You're not getting opportunities with the best prospective customers. There's so much. There was I want to say it was Business Insiders where I read it, but they were quoting a study that said 70% of a company's stock value was attributed to the CEO's reputation.
Yes.
And even for companies that aren't publicly traded, the theory behind it, the process behind it is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's what killed LinkedIn anyway, where I mostly stay. People are saying H2H, human to human. Selling is a human process, human to human. Yep. Now we're talking about AI and the bots and they can all do it and blah, blah, blah. But if it's human to human, then as the CEO, aren't you a human? And don't the people who buy from you want to know that there's a strong, thoughtful CEO behind all of this, behind the product and the people? Of course, they want to know you. I always think, gosh, like if I go to a restaurant, for example, I always want to know the owner. I always ask, is the owner here, or the manager around? Why? I want to compliment them about their staff, about, the ambiance, the food, whatever it is. Or sometimes I want to give them a suggestion, but like I want to know who they are. And I love to frequent the restaurants where I know the owner, right? And that's a simple way of putting it, but people want to frequent your business when they know you because they want to help you. They want to make sure you thrive, and they're going to be more willing to help your whole company. And it's like, I was just at SaaStr, you guys, and it was so great. We had so much fun. It's the first time I've been to a conference where the participants were actually talking to the vendors rather than avoiding them. Imagine that, right? It was crazy. But my point here really is not that, except that the CEOs were there in the booths. People wanted to meet them and talk to them and hear them. I mean, it's why I have my podcast. What is the story of founder CEO? What is their, how did they do it? How did they start it? How did they get where they are? When people know that about you, it makes them like, wow, I want to support that person. And then, like, I don't expect, I met, this guy Sumner. He was awesome. He's the CEO of Propensity. I'm going to call him out because they were so awesome. We talked and I said, well, but I wouldn't expect him to give me a demo. He has salespeople. Like, you tell me which salesperson, introduce me and them, right? I mean, that salesperson didn't even need to cold call or do anything to get a great lead. So it's just silly to me that CEOs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've kind of,
Sorry.
I stopped because I knew Tom's trying to get us to the first point of the agenda. We've
right,
gone way
right.
off agenda already.
Yeah, I was just going to sit back and listen. So,
Yeah.
oh, brother. All right. God, where were we? We're episode 138.
Yes.
And
Welcome,
and
everybody.
welcome. And I was going to let everybody thank Fist Bump again for their sponsorship and their work on this. And I will do that now. And Alice, now that we've already are halfway through the show, why don't you
You
tell
introduce
us,
yourself.
yeah, introduce yourself and tell everybody a little about who you are. And
Yeah,
then we'll
you're
get
just supposed to say the woman who needs no introduction, right?
that's what, yes.
I think what we legitimately just did is we picked right up where we left off last time, and we didn't think about it. We just started going like, oh yeah, we have to introduce Alice and
That's right.
tell
That's
everybody.
right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm sure
hi,
that,
I'm Alice Heiman. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I spend my days strategizing with CEOs. I'm their go-to-market strategy to elevate their sales so they can increase their valuation so that they have lots of opportunities. They can either exit, they can get more money, they can open a new market, whatever. When your sales are where you need them to be and they're profitable, your options just open up. So that's what I spend my days doing. For those of you who might know or remember, and those of you who don't, my humble beginnings are with Miller Heiman, a sales methodology company that had strategic selling, blue sheets, ring a bell, conceptual selling, green sheets, large account management, gold sheets. Somebody was calling them pink sheets the other day. I'm like, no, there's no pink sheets. But anyway, from the world of the complex sale, lots of speakers, long sales cycles, techniques, lots of people on the buying team, lots of people on the, and dollar stakes, right? I can try to make that all. Those are the kinds of companies I work with. They're doing those big deals like that. They're usually selling to companies that are 100 to 1,000 times their own size. So lots of complexities go with that. So that's what I do. And I also host a podcast called Sales Talk for CEOs, and I'd love you to tune in.
Awesome. And do you work, Alice, mostly with tech companies that are doing more of these enterprise sales, or is it mostly technology? Or
Yeah, it is mostly tech, but occasionally I get something else innovative, which is kind of fun. Like I work with a super cool art company that sells art to huge projects, commercial projects, hotels, stuff like that. That is a super complex sale. So every once in a while, I'm a little bit on the edge, but mostly it is tech companies, and they're all sub 100 million in revenues.
Okay. So, hey, I want to hit a question here from Bob. He's actually got a couple of points I want to,
Okay.
but,
Well, Bob.
well, let me do that first because we were just talking about the importance of the CEO being visible, and he brought up a point, and I think in the tech industry, right? I think there's even another variant of what he's saying is saying that CEOs aren't speaking the language of the customer; they speak in financialese. And I also think in the tech world, and a lot of times if they're a technical founder, they speak in technoese. On top of that, how, I guess two questions: does that matter? Right, when the CEO is trying to build that human to human relationship, and if it does matter, what language do they need to speak? Do they to the customer, or again, does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I don't want to change it to be too much, right? But I do want I want the CEO to be authentic. Talk about the stuff that lights you up. Talk about stuff that's important to you and that you know those who follow you. Talk about things that help those who follow you. People love the simple how to, like, how do I do that? That sounds great, but how do I do it, right? So if your CEO and many tech founders, yes, they're super technical, right? Got it. But they know how to speak to other humans. Some of them might struggle a little, but that's why we have marketing people and salespeople to help them. So I think that the easiest way to do this in my mind is to say, look, let's tell me the things you are, even if it's like future stuff, which is even better, right? Like, what is in your brain and that the people who follow you and will want to buy from you care about. Let's brainstorm those. And like content pillars, pick 3, don't have 10. You only need to talk about 3 things over and over and over again, the things that really light you up. And then just brainstorm it out. And you can use ChatGPT or your own marketing person or a salesperson who's a good writer, anybody. Just, kind of lay it out and think about it. And then start to think, all right, how can I do this on a regular basis? Now, it's not just LinkedIn, right? You can be on a podcast. You can write a blog post. You could write for a industry magazine. You could, run a webinar. There's no end to the way the content can come out of you, but you first got to know, what do you want to talk about, right? And then if you're talking about it and the other people around you are saying that's too, something you said earlier, Tom, is just like, I put it in ChatGPT and tell it to say it like a 3rd grader. Okay, so if it's really technical, but you want to tell people about it and tell them how to do it or to understand it some way, then let ChatGPT help you simplify it down, right? So I think that you can talk about technical things or complicated things or things that people might not have considered. That's great. If that's what lights you up, do it. But just make sure that you think it through, take the time. It's like maybe brainstorm it all out and then plot it out and deliver this on. You might just pick up your iPhone and talk to it on YouTube. That's great too. YouTube's a great channel. So think about, where is your audience? What is the message to hear from you? What lights you up? Prepare the content and then decide.
Sounds too easy.
Well, and I really like the 3 topics, right? Pick 3 topics. Know that those are, even a technical founder, right, in a tech company usually have founded the company because there's a problem that they believe that their technology will address, right? And they're passionate about solving that problem. That can easily be a foundational element of the top 3 things that you're talking about.
And I would say, and Alice, I'd love for your opinion on this. I would say also, you got your 3 topics or kind of your business topics, but you also have to strategize a way to bring your humanity into it. If it's all business all the time, people start to get bored and they're going to tune out, because our human nature, our emotions want this person. Like, who are they really, really, really? Not just what do they say and sounding like, the brochure. So they've got to bring that little bit of humanity into it, because we live in an era where it's content for connection.
Mm-hmm.
We need them to remember them. We need them to remember their company. And if it's just the brochure, it's real easy to forget. But if you have that emotional side, and I've said this a couple of weeks ago, like we brought on a new customer a few weeks ago. And when I was talking to the CEO and I said, well, why us? Why now? And he kind of got this laugh and smile on his face, like, I can't believe I'm going to say this. But he said, I remember, he goes, it was probably 1.5 years or 2 years ago. And he was talking about one of my posts, that it was my daughter and I hiking, but then the content was about the unexpected trails that are in front of us and how that related to business. And he goes, I like hiking with my kids, and I just always have that picture of you and your daughter in my head. And I knew that. And so when I was ready for leader led content, you were the person I thought of.
Yeah, people are always striving to find something they have in common. Like my husband is the greatest at this, but sometimes it drives me nuts because we'll meet a complete stranger and he will somehow figure out how we know someone in common or have something in common or, you know, whatever it is. But people do want that. That's how we connect. What do we have in common? We're both grandmas, or we both ski, or we both, oh, you sail? Oh my gosh, I sail, right? Like we're looking for those things that we have in common for sure. So I think, you know, and Bob is saying the same thing in the comments. He's like, teach them how to tell a story. Yes, 100%. Nancy Duarte and her team, they're great storytellers. Go listen to them. There's storytelling. You know, yes, learn how to tell a story. That is absolutely true. But they want to hear something about you. Like if you're saying, well, I built this because, right? Because like I was sitting around with my friends over a beer and we're all working in the same industry. We're saying, solved by now. Like, how do we fix this? Like, we have 3 really good out. The next thing you know, we're clinking our glasses and cheers to we just started a company to fix this problem, right? Or like my friend Melanie Fillet from Speckett, she tells this great story about how she's working at this company and she's trying to find a product and she's not finding anything and she's searching everywhere. And then she's like kind of building it in her head, like it needs to do this. And then she drags her friend into the elevator, like where no one can hear, right? They're in the elevator, the cone of silence. She's like, I figured it out. This is and blah, 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 blah. And her friend says, okay, well, let's buy that one. Let's get that one. She goes, nope, we're going to build it, right? Like, what a great, and she told that on my podcast. On other people's, and people are like, oh my gosh. So on a trip in the elevator, a 30-second trip, she convinced her they were both going to leave their jobs and start a company, right? People want to hear that stuff, right? They want to hear the hard stuff too. It's like, yeah, this and then this happened, and I had to throw the whole thing at that. She's like, oh my gosh, I bought this company because they solved the problem that I had, and they were in a different country, and I thought I could bring it to the US, and then it turns out I had to buy it because they went through the software and it's like, it didn't actually do what I needed it to do. So I had to read from scratch. Great story. That costs time and money, right? And a lot of stress. So people want you 100%, Brandon.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the areas that is most forgotten. And I think it's because it's easy to go business forward. It's really challenging and scary to add our humanity into it at scale. It's one thing to be in a room with 10 or 15 people and to tell stories about your life, but it's another thing to tell some stories about your life. Like the story you just said. I mean, I've done that as a CEO. It's not a story I like to tell a whole lot, other than the fact that it's good. Like I bought software from a company years ago, and it didn't do what they said it was going to do, and I didn't do the contract well enough, and we ended up eating it and had to throw it all out and start all over and all that. But when you tell stories like that is where people see your humanity and feel connected to you instead of like you're up on this pedestal. And I think CEOs get too comfortable being on the pedestal, not because they're arrogant, but because it's just safe.
Yeah. And I don't even know that it's that so much as they just like really don't know what to do, right? Like, okay, you're the CEO of a company. You know, you're okay. Look, if you're a CEO of a big company, I'm not talking about Fortune 500 companies. Those people know what to do. I'm talking about founders. Like, even if you're a CEO founder and you're 10 or 20 years in, like you built this, you may never have even worked anywhere else, or maybe you did, but for a short time, right? So you're in charge of everything. You may have a board that you can go to. I hope you have a board. If you don't have a board, please get a board, get some advisors, get somebody around you, right, that can help you besides your immediate team, because sometimes there's things you shouldn't reveal to them, but you need your team to help you, but then you need these outside people, right? So you're not going to know how to do everything. Where's the school of CEO? Never saw it, right? It's not an MBA. That doesn't how to be a CEO. Like, who knows how to be a CEO before they are one? You got to figure it all out for yourself, right? And so if you are thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, like, great, glad you had that thought. Now go find somebody who does know what to do and get them to help you, right? So as it relates to sales, and why I say that, the CEOs are the sales prevention department, it's because most founder CEOs in tech, where I mainly work, invented something, solved a problem, didn't come from sales. I'd say less than 25% of them came out of sales. So how on earth are they supposed to know what to do? Now, did they sell when they started their company and did founder-led sales? Of course they did. But it's that, that entrepreneurial enthusiasm and having a title, founder CEO, that gets them where they are, right? So that's great. But then at some point, right, we've got to scale. So we've got to put some process around it, and nobody's going to sell like the CEO. So we got to figure out a process that will work, right? But when the CEO thinks wrongly that everyone's going to sell just like they did and have entree just like they did, my title is sales, yours is CEO. You think I can get in the door the same way you can? No. Right? So now you're being the sales prevention department because you're trying to say everyone should sell like you. Not going to happen. And then I hear CEOs telling me, oh, I outsell my sales team every day. I'm like, right. And you should. So it leads to them be the chief door opener instead of selling. Like, now you've got a beautiful situation. You've got some good salespeople, feed them the leads. You can still be there and giving that CEO confidence, but let the salespeople work the sales process, guide the decision, help the buyers, and close the deal. Don't keep those all for yourself. So that's another way you're. There's so many other things that they do and don't even realize because they don't know what a good sales process should look like. They don't know sales. They're not a sales leader. That wasn't their job, CEO, right? So leading marketing, they don't know what marketing is supposed to do. Oh, marketing is supposed to deliver leads to sales. Demand gen, super important, right? Don't hire more salespeople if you want more sales. Generate more leads, more quality leads if you want more sales, right? I think these are things that a CEO never been in sales, or even if they have, they've never run a organization or built an entire sales process out. They just don't know. So they prevent sales because they want to be in control and they just want everybody to do what they think, as a CEO, they think is the right thing, but it's really not.
I think you just brought up a idea for a new business is a CEO boot camp, right? For CEOs that really, because you're totally right? It's like MBA or business school or college or none of that prepares you. And I agree with what Bob says, right? Experience is going to really be your ultimate teacher. However, I think there is a lot. I just look at myself, right? And I've been a CEO multiple times. The things that I know now, I would have loved to have known when I first started,
Yeah.
and it would have been a big head start into that process. And yeah, there is. I mean, you have these, in the tech world, you have Y Combinator and you have accelerators and things like that. But I'm not even sure that they really teach you how to operate as effectively as a CEO, not just managing, but to the point you just brought up, Alice, is how do you, as a CEO, use that responsibility and that role to drive the growth of the business and to
Right. And driving, yeah.
maximize the growth of the
And
business?
I think you probably learn the finance and you learn how to talk to investors when you go to
Right.
Y Combinator
Right.
or any of those Techstars or anything. And even in an MBA, you might learn about finance, which is super important. And maybe how to put, a deck together for a bank or an investor. Those are really great things,
Yeah,
right? But who's teaching you how to develop your team? Because here you are, you've hired the best team you could at the time with what you had available, right? Now, that's great, but how are you leveling them up? How are you lifting them up? How are you make sure they're continuing developing? And if they're not being, how do you get somebody who is? Like, these are things that we don't teach, and we don't enough about go to market. I think in Techstars and any of those programs, I'm not really sure, but I think they might teach them something about go-to-market. But it seems like at least the CEOs I talk to, they don't really know that much about it. So like getting that from, so the boot camp would really be a go-to-market boot camp for CEOs, like what I always need to know about sales, right? And when I say sales, I mean the whole thing. It's all go-to-market. Like, how do we find customers? How do we, engage with them? How do we get them to buy from us? And how do we retain them and grow them and make them loyal followers so that they'll refer people to us, right? Because if you do that whole process, sales is so much easier, right? But who is teaching a CEO what that entire, world looks like?
Yeah.
And how to attack it, right? So then they hire people who should know, but most sales leaders, VPs, they don't know, right? And so you hire somebody from sales and somebody from marketing, and then hope those two brains can do some sort of a, Vulcan mind meld or something and figure it out, but it isn't working.
So I get, and I have I think that part of the problem, and this is going to lead to a question, so I'll make a comment and it'll lead to a question, is I think even the Y Combinators, and I don't know for sure, but I think a lot of the accelerators or certainly boards that come from, VCs and so forth in the tech world are still operating off the predictable revenue playbook, the Aaron Ross predictable revenue playbook from 2012, I think it was, or
2009 it was written.
2009.
I was going to say it's 9.
Yeah.
9.
Okay. So, just a couple years ago. And what we've been, I think, the title of this show is Modern Selling, right? Predictable revenue playbook, in our opinion, is not modern selling. And it's not effective, right? We know that it's not effective, and we see this all the time, because if it was, there would be much better results than what we're doing. What do you recommend? Now to my question. What do you recommend, Alice, when you talk to a company, and an early stage company, or even an early stage could be, up to 5-10 million of sales, right? It's not just a complete startup. What modern, I'm going to emphasize the word modern, what modern structure and strategy do you recommend that they do for go-to-market and so forth as a starting point? And again, how does that strategy and structure, how does the CEO play into that as a key piece of the DNA of that structure? That question makes sense?
4 hours.
Yeah, we're good. I'm gonna. If you do that in 2 minutes, that would be perfect.
Yeah, but I'll do it in 2 minutes. So let's start here. I would not prescribe the same strategy for a startup as I would for a 20-year-old startup, which is what I work with a lot. 10 to 20-year-old startups. It's like they're acting like a startup because they got where they were and then stalled because they got there by sheer oomph, not because they had process in place or the best sellers or a go-to-market strategy, right? But they still got there, which is, kudos. I think how much faster could you have gotten there and how much more, how much bigger, right? But it's great. But I think that it is different for startups. Now, look, the VCs and PE firms out there have certain things in mind when they buy a company, and right? They all want to get at some point a unicorn or a decacorn, right? They only need one of those and everybody's rich. That's all great, right? But I think a lot of sustainability is probably more important. In a startup, it's a bit of a land grab, right? So you've developed something, maybe you're first to market or you're best in market or better than what's already there, right? So you've got some place in the market, and now you have to hurry up, right? Mm-hmm. And get some market share, because got
to get traction.
And so that's important, right? And so quickly is a little different than when you're 10 or 20 years old. And by the way, really, most of the companies I work with are not VC. They're none of them are VC backed, and very few are PE backed. Most of the tech companies I work with, bootstrapped to where they are. They might have taken a few loans out and things like that from the bank or the SBA, but most of them are bootstrapped. They did it themselves and now they fund their own growth, right? So it really depends. So when I first start talking to a CEO, first, where are you? Are you, how start really early educational, I mentioned them, but they're selling. Okay, that's where I come in. We are selling something. And then, how many years have you been selling it? What's the market look like? Where are you going? Where do you want to go? What's your exit strategy, right? Once I understand what's in the CEO's head about what is now, how did they get to what is now, and where do they want to go, can prescribe the strategy, right? And so, and I'm getting a few messages to connect stuff. Am I connected?
Yeah, you kind of come and go a little bit. You
Yeah,
are a little.
you're buffering a little bit.
Yeah.
So once I get that information, then I can prescribe the strategy. But there are some things that everyone should do, right? So every CEO should be a door opener. They should open their network, so the salespeople can get that, right? That's great. Like, help your salespeople as much as you can. It's not like, oh, I hired some salespeople, so now I'm out of sales. Not my job anymore. I got a sales leader, I got a CRO, I got salespeople, I'm out. No, every good CEO knows that is not true. Whether you're a startup and you're doing founder-led sales, or whether you're 20 years old, right, you have a role in sales. And that role changes as the company matures. You're doing founder-led sales, you're doing it all from hello to I'm your loyal customer. All right. Then you start to hire some people maybe to take care of the customer success piece, people to do, I always recommend you could do the actual selling, but somebody else is taking care of all the admin stuff around sales because there's so much of it. Of course, we have AI for that today too. Doing it yourself, right? And hopefully while you're doing it yourself, you're thinking, how do I get some salespeople to do this? I'm going to write this stuff down and write some stuff down so I can start building a process that would work for sellers when I start hiring. Sometimes they start hiring a sales leader first and then hiring salespeople, whatever happens, right? But the key thing, no matter what, you need to think about are, who is my audience and how do I serve them? And if I keep that in mind, I build my sales process around that. I understand my customer journey. I understand how my customer wins when they buy what I sell and are successful using it. Notice I didn't stop it when they buy what I sell. When they buy what I sell and they're successful using it. So build everything around that. That's the end result that we want, because somebody successfully using what I sell puts dollars in my pocket over and over again, because I retain them, they buy more, and they refer other people to me. So that is gold right there. So build it around that. But if you are going out to market right now with a set of salespeople, or even yourself, and you're thinking, all right, I'm going to get a list and I'm going to email them and I'm going to cold call them and I'm going to spam them on LinkedIn too. Stop it. Don't do it. Look, I love Aaron Ross. I know him personally, by the way. And I love what he built. And
Sure.
It worked for a minute.
It
right?
made total sense at the time. Yeah.
It did. It was beautiful. It worked for a minute. That minute's gone. Okay. So don't rely on old playbooks. What do your customers need? How do they want to buy? So first it starts with, what kind of humans have you hired to interface with these humans that are going to buy from you? If I'm 25, and no offense to anyone, 25 years old, hardly ever sold anything before, and you're asking me to call on director and VP level, I don't know what a director does. I don't know what a VP does. I don't even know how they got to be a director or a VP. I don't understand. I understand my product and my company. Don't understand the industry very well. Had a little bit of training in that. Don't understand what a day in the life of a VP or a director is, but I'm going to call them up and sell them something. No, abs does not work. So stop it. Okay, just stop it. So think, who are the humans best interface with the customers today? Who will be able to relate to them? Who will be able to converse with them? Who will be able to ask them and really dig into their problems and understand before they start solving?
Mhm.
Who are these people? Where do I find them? Or how do I train them to be that, right? So just like, let's just start there, right? That's go to strategy. Hello, there's your base. Who are asking to do this job, right? You have to understand that no one wants another email in their inbox. And I do not want another LinkedIn message that says, we sell blah, here's my calendar link. No one wants that. And we are making a bad name for sales, which is a very noble and important profession because it's a helping profession. We solve problems as sellers. So stop it, right? And what should you do? Be a human. Do those people you want to sell to need, right? How can I, but let me step back one little step. I forgot to say, target. Narrow your niche. Who are your people most likely? If you're brand new, it's not as easy to know. But when you're look at your own customer base, analyze it, figure out who's buying what and why, right? Now go after this very targeted audience. And that way you now know who they are, what they do, what they think, what messaging they will respond to, right? And likely to buy from you. Then you have these humans who know how to relate to them and understand them, right? So this is sending them spam. Just stop it, right? Like, how do I get an introduction? If I can't, then what do I do? Yeah, I do, SEO and try to gather them. I do identity resolution. I use the modern tools out there, right, to draw them to me, right, so that I don't have to cold call. But if I do cold outreach, I'm going to do it in a superhuman way. I know you, and I can help you. So would that be worth a conversation? This is modern selling today. And yeah, there's a lot more to it. Like I said, do you have 4 hours? But I think that's the base of it.
That was pretty good. I think that was just about 2 minutes. Brandon, I have a question for you kind of related to this.
Okay.
And I was listening to what Alice was saying there. And in the clients that you're working with, right? Because you're working with people I know that have tried different sales emotions and they're not doing the way that they, maybe getting the results that they're looking for.
Yeah.
Would you say that what you're seeing with the people that you work for, and then Alice, I'd have asked a question for you as well, is this sort of old school, predictable revenue, send, cold emails, cold calling, pitch slaps on LinkedIn? Is that actually sales prevention? So in a sense that it's not even just like it's moving you forward, but it's
Yeah.
actually moving you backwards. It's not just keeping you static. It's actually pulling you backward because, and I think I have an answer to me is that you're impacting your brand and your perception to the
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, we don't work with a lot of SaaS companies or tech companies in that manner. And so a lot of the companies I work with, they've been pretty traditional relational selling to begin with. A lot of, windshield time and lunches and dinner. Those, I had somebody I spoke with, they were 31 years into being a co-owner of a company. And he just said, I just miss it when I could make 30 calls in a week and 15 people would call me back and half of those would want to meet with me and half of those would become an opportunity and half of those would become a client. And I just had, lots of lunches, lots of dinners, lots of ball games, lots of this, and business was great. And I built all these relationships. It's like, I got to the point where I was making about 300 to 400 calls a week and no one was calling me back and nobody wanted to go to the ball game. Nobody wanted to meet for lunch. So even though they're not doing like the call center, cold call, SDR model, they are still struggling with that. But I think because a lot of them they're older, they're leaders, they're not doing the typical SDR voice message that sounds robotic and scripted because it is. But they're still getting the same results. People just aren't looking to talk. I have a belief that it's number one, they don't know you, so you're just another voice trying to capture their attention. And so that's why I believe this having a voice and a face of a company is so important. But the second thing is, I think, and this isn't going to be a popular opinion, but I think messaging has gotten so bad for most companies that even their voicemails, their messaging has just gotten so bad and sounding like everyone else that they're not able to differentiate themselves even if they leave a voicemail or send an email. That's a whole nother topic, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think market research, a lot like content for connection, has gone away over the last 10 to 15 years because the startup world and all these experts have come onto the scene that are teaching people how to do things that, quite honestly, I think a lot of it's either wrong or it works, as Alice says, it works for a minute, but once people get privy to it, it stops working.
Yeah, I read something the other day actually that market research kind of has like disappeared off the face of the earth, right? What happens when you talk to your customers? Have you done any market TAM, total addressable market? But I don't think anyone that I've talked to really understands what TAM means or total addressable market. Like, you can't address that whole market. You got to niche in. So it's just like a in some ways. It's like, yeah, so what if that's your, and then you guess, oh, I think we could get about 10% of it. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. Like, we just look at so many of the wrong things. But I agree with you, Brandon. And it's a good question, Tom. But, it just dawned on me too. It's like, so what, again, back to what should we do? Well, first of all, stop spamming. No one wants it, right? Just stop it, right? And if you are going to leave a message, send an email, put something in my LinkedIn box, right? Be super thoughtful about it. Work out the messaging. We've got AI to help us these days. AI knows what I care about. So if you don't, ask AI, right? I mean, there's ways to get good messaging and then make it sound superhuman. Like I always tell people, you're helping a friend. You want this person to eventually be your friend. Talk friendly, not bullets and, formal sentences and stuff. Like, just talk friendly. Like, hey, like, maybe I can help you. Would it be worth a conversation? Like, just be friendly. But, another thing you can do besides cold outreach is hold events. And I didn't talk about that before, it slipped my mind, but it's something that I have all my clients doing super successfully, right? Hold an event. Hold a roundtable and invite people. Tell them the question that they need to come prepared to answer and share. Hold a dinner. Hold an event near another event so people are already there. Go to events, right? Because I think, like you were saying, Brandon, one of your clients who used to, and same for me, it's like I could get people on the phone in the 90s, I could take them to lunch, and I could fly to them and take their team out on a boat or for a dinner or for a golf or whatever, right? And it did work, and people did like it. And I think people be with other people like them who they can discuss things on in a smaller, situation where you can actually have discussions. So make that available. You can invite the exact people you want to these events, but it has to be something powerful for them. It's not you pitching them. It's they get to talk to their colleagues, and learn and understand, or there's somebody there with some valuable information they'll get to hear from, not you talking about your company, right? So there are other ways to gather your community and get them to understand you and to have some percent of them buy from you. But volumes of email, volumes of calls, and volumes of LinkedIn spam are not the way. Stop it.
Alice, one thing you said that really struck me, and I know sometimes I sound like an old guy, and maybe it is, but a lot of salespeople don't talk to buyers like they're a friend because they don't have any friends in the industry. They're new to an industry. They're changing jobs so often that it's not a career. And they're not in a long term making relationships with people. They're in it going, I got to hit my numbers today. I got to hit my numbers this week. I got to hit my numbers this month or this quarter, or else I'm going to be out of a job. And I think in a lot of ways, we've kind of screwed ourselves as business owners by having that kind of culture and environment that doesn't support sellers to be good sellers.
Oh, 100%.
What do you think?
We do not set our sellers up to be success. Not. We do not set them up for success. And it is super sad because we just run through them, right? Oh, that one's not hitting their goal. Get rid of them, right? Or we let them sit there too long, not hitting their goal, not making them successful, and finally let them go, right? So that is something that every CEO needs to be tuned into. If you that only 50% of your salespeople are hitting quota things, either you set that quota wrong. Sorry, ultimately, CEO, you're responsible. You took that from your VP or your CRO or whatever, and you said, okay. Or they told you the number and you said, oh, let's double it. And I've heard it a million times. Oh, that's not enough. Add 15% to that. Double that, right? Unrealistic. Unrealistic. Where are the leads coming from that are going to power that number? Tell me, right? Like, it's just sales math. You can do it. You know your average deal size, and you know how many converse people have to get someone interested to buy, right? And then you know what your average deal size is. So you can figure it out. Now, that number may not be what you want it to be, but that's what it is. And when you inflate those numbers, of course they're not going to hit their goal, right? Or two, if you have set reasonable goals with a little stretch in them, of course, right? That's going to help your company grow. So really set those goals wisely. And the salespeople can't hit their number. What did you miss? Did you hire the wrong person? The wrong type of person? Did you not onboard them successfully? Did you not train them? Did you not retrain them? Do you not provide ongoing training?
All of the above.
No one's coaching them.
Sorry, you delayed. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, or all of the above, because that's my thought is so often it's all of the above. We don't onboard well. We don't train them well. We don't keep training them well. Well, it's just, we run through them and hope that some of them are going to figure out how to be successful.
On their own. And so if they realize you haven't set them up for success, they will leave and go somewhere else.
The modern
sellers.
version of my first sales job was the literal, here's your desk, here's a phone, here's a phone book. Here's the type of people we call. Go.
Yep.
It's
probably not all that different.
We're not doing much better, Tom. We're not doing.
Hey, I wanted to hit, Bob, your comment here is one of the more intriguing comments I've seen in a while. I've really appreciated it. He's talking about the modern buyer, not the modern seller, the modern buyer. Mm-hmm. He says, from the buyer's point of view, sales no longer solves problems. ChatGPT does. Sellers are order takers and implementation experts. It's an interesting concept, right? As buyers we talked a lot about this, right? We used, before the internet, we had to call the salesperson to get the information. Then the internet came along and we could search and do things on the internet. But now we have this whole AI world, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you choose to use, where you can do a lot of this research, homework, things like that in a much more deeper and broader way than you can with search and with other things there. What are your guys' thought? Do you think that as a sales, and again, I'm looking forward and I'm looking at modern selling, and do we have to assume that as salespeople, our customers are not just doing what we always say research, like Google research, but they're using AI and they're using these other tools to do another level of depth of research and so forth, so that as a salesperson, maybe you're trying to basically potentially clarify or verify what they've learned and then help them through the buying process. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on that. Because of that, BANT doesn't work anymore. So if you're still teaching BANT, stop it, right? How many times have it said stop it on it? Budget authority needs, of course you need to know those things before you close a deal, but that is not we do a qualification anymore, right? So that's just like so 1980s, stop it. You know, if you listen to Tim Reister of Corporate Visions, who does buyer side research, Bob, so that up because he's got a lot of really good stuff there, right? These buyers are Googling, using ChatGPT, asking their friends. They're gathering a bunch of information before they ever even say, okay, these are the 3 products I'm going to look at, or these are my 3 solutions. Could do it in-house, could do nothing, or could buy it from someone. All right, now they are when they show up to you, right? So you're going to get where they are right now, right? What have you learned so far that brings you to talk to me today? And then shut up and let them tell you, right? And then you start to, this is why someone who has been trained in a sales methodology that marches along this path isn't going to be able to do this. It has to be a seller who understands how to talk to a buyer and have this conversation. So it's like, all right, you're telling me you did this, you did that, and this is what ChatGPT is. Okay, great. Okay, so how now can I be the most helpful to you based on where you are right now? Because I could tell you all kinds of things about my products and services, but I'd rather spend time understanding now what you're trying to solve for, and that you've told me you're not going to do it in-house, you're definitely going to take action, and you're looking at one of 3 vendors for your choice, or whatever I learned, right? So, you know, as Tim Reister's research says, I have to now work with their preconceived notions. A lot of that could be misinformation, because anybody's website, I'm going to dare say anybody's website, it's pretty hard to figure out what they do, right? People's websites suck, basically. So you go to a website and you even tell ChatGPT to go to the website. Can you truly figure out from that if they can solve your problem or not? Do you truly understand what they're saying? No. So you get some preconceived notions. This one can do that. It's even just like go to G2 Crowd and say who competes with, and it will give you 5 people that don't actually compete and 3 maybe who do. Now you're looking at that information and it's like, it's hard. So I'm coming to you with these preconceived notions and some misinformation. And again, this is, Corporate Visions. This is research. They've done this research, right? So as a seller, what do I do now? If I'm asking, well, do you have the authority to make this decision? Do you guys have what's your timing? What are you going to make? Like, that doesn't even fit in this world. I have to address that buyer and listen to them and then see if I can pick up on any of those misconceptions and understand what the preconceived notions are. Okay, great. Now I understand that. Now I can go forward and be smart and say something like, I see that. And I'm wondering if you've thought about this. Because that's when I add real value, when I can get that buyer to start, or set of buyers, right? Because it's usually more than one in a complex sale, to think beyond where they are right now to something that would really help them. Then I'm adding real value, not of my product or service, adding value by helping them think through their buying process. The decision-making of the group, the solution, other people's perceptions of the solution, what's really going to work best, how hard it's going to. That's my job as the seller, right? I mean, when you think about the buyer side and you read the buyer side research, another person, Brent Adamson, follow him. He's got a new book coming out, The Frame Making Sale, where he's talking about how these buyers have so much information now and so much overload, right? that they are in analysis paralysis, and you go through this whole sales cycle with them, buying cycle with them, and they do absolutely nothing because they have no confidence in themselves to make a decision. So, I mean, look at the buyer side research. So help use that.
I think that to summarize what you said is, I think if you, as a seller, the way that you want to up level your sales team is, one, help the person navigate to the point where they are willing and able to make a decision, number one. And then number two,
Right.
with a high probability that you're the decision that they're making, right? Because if they don't make any decision, you're not going to be the selected one with it. So I think as a seller, your job is to level up, help them make that a decision, and ideally, again, maximize the probability that's with your deal.
Right.
And to do it
if
at
it's
reasonable
not,
velocity, right? So that it's not taking 10 years to get there.
right, you're right. And in such a good place with so much grace that they would refer you to anyone, that they would come back to you if that doesn't end up being a solution, that you can come back to them in 6 months and see how their solution's working. And if it didn't work, like, leave them with in such a good place, like,
in their mouth, right?
For helping me. No, thank you for allowing me to help, right? That's another thing I just want to say really quick. CEOs, if your salespeople are not thanking every person that they lose a deal with, start now. Why aren't you thanking them? They spent their time with your sellers and your team and your engineers and whoever, and they didn't choose you. Oh, well, they still spent all that time.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on.
That's too human. It's too human. You know, I mean, I hate to be such a naysayer all the time, but really, I mean, we've been doing, what are we on, 138 shows, episodes, and really the same thing we say over and over again is basically be a human being, talk to people, ask good questions, be curious, thank people for their time. Like, it's kind of frustrating that we just keep going back to that. You know, I had a sales call this morning, and my preparation for it was going through and learning everything I could about them. And then I got on and I said, "Oh my gosh, I did a bunch of research. You've done some really cool stuff in your life." And 30 some minutes later, they're like, "Okay, tell me what we need to do." We never even really talked a whole lot.
About what you sell, right?
Right. But it was just being a human, and I wasn't playing a game. I was genuinely like impressed with who they were, and I read stuff. I'm like, okay, this is really fascinating to me, and tell me about it. And I don't know, it's not manipulation. It's just being human.
Percent. But be human, like, be authentic. Don't do that and then just be, talking about it to talk about it. So you think, oh, I'm going to build rapport. I'm going to talk about it.
But that's the way we train, right? And that's the challenge, because when we onboard and we train, it's always systematic. Well, we're going to build rapport, and then it becomes like rope is all power.
Yeah, building rapport never ends. Never ends. Building your credibility never ends. It's not a step in your sales process. It is ongoing.
All right.
We hit time.
Pardon?
We hit time already. That was fast.
I know.
I told you we needed 4 hours.
All right. Well, that ends part 1 of 4 that we're going to. Brandon, any final questions, thoughts before we wrap up?
No, Alice, as usual, great stuff. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. And I do have more questions, but we're out of time. And I know Alice has a call, I think, that started 2 minutes ago. We need to let her go.
All right.
Yeah, well, we'll just do it again. Like, it's so much fun. I love, you can't tell. I love talking about this.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Great questions, great comments.
Alice, last thing, though, if somebody wants to reach out and get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, definitely you can go to my website, aliceheiman.com, but find me on LinkedIn. But please tell me that you heard me on this show so that I will accept your connection request. No blank connection request. Don't do it. In there that shows me you, my friend Samantha McKenna would say.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again, Alice. Thanks, Brandon. And until next week, God, I never remember what he says, but happy modern selling.
Happy modern.
Modern selling.
Modern
Bye,
selling.
everybody.
All right.